I didn't know my life was about to fracture so quietly that Friday night. One moment, I was standing in front of the mirror in our bedroom, smoothing down a deep emerald dress and smiling at my reflection, thinking how lucky I was to have a husband like Mark. The next, I would be sitting at a table surrounded by people who smiled at me, laughed with me, and humiliated the man I loved without blinking. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Emma, and for 14 months, I had believed, truly believed, that my marriage was solid. Not perfect, but strong, grounded, built on respect. That illusion cracked the moment I watched my husband stand awkwardly beside a restaurant table and realize there was no seat for him, no chair, no place, just silence. Just judgment disguised as politeness. Just my best friend's voice saying, "Oh, it's no big deal. He can wait at the bar." And me standing there, frozen. I still replay that moment in my head. The way Mark looked at me, not angry, not demanding, just waiting for me to say something, anything, waiting for me to choose him. And I didn't. Not then. I told myself it was just a mistake, a reservation issue, a misunderstanding. I told myself that speaking up would cause a scene, that smoothing things over was better than conflict. What I didn't realize was that my silence spoke louder than any words. That night wasn't about a missing chair. It was about power. It was about control. It was about watching the person who had been part of my life forever remind me, very publicly, that she believed she came first. And worse, I let her. As Mark walked away toward the bar, his back straight, his dignity intact, something twisted painfully in my chest. Because I knew, even then, that this wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. And that dinner, what I thought was just another social obligation, would become the moment everything changed. My friendships, my marriage, and the way I saw myself. Because once you watch someone you love be humiliated in front of you, and you do nothing, you don't get to pretend you didn't choose a side. If you asked me before that dinner who I was, I would have answered confidently. I was Emma, the woman who kept her life organized, her emotions contained, and her marriage protected from unnecessary drama. I worked remotely as a financial consultant, which sounds bland until you realize it meant I lived in a world of numbers that could predict outcomes before people even sensed risk. Spreadsheets were my comfort. Patterns were my security. If something didn't add up, I could usually find out why. But people weren't spreadsheets. People didn't follow formulas. And I didn't understand that until I married Mark. Mark, my husband, was the kind of man who made things feel real. Not glamorous, not polished, just honest. He ran a modest auto parts shop that kept him busy without swallowing him whole. He came home smelling like metal and soap, his hands rough from work, his smile warm enough to make my nervous system unclench. 14 months of marriage isn't a lifetime, but it's long enough to build habits that start to feel like home. Every morning we woke up tangled in the sheets, his arm heavy around my waist like an anchor. We'd make breakfast together. Well, I made most of it, and he played the role of helpful assistant like it was a sacred duty. He'd try to flip pancakes, burn one, then look at me like a guilty kid caught with a broken vase. "I swear it was perfect until the last 2 seconds," he'd say. I'd laugh, roll my eyes, and slide the good pancakes onto his plate. Evenings were my favorite. Not because they were exciting, but because they were ours. We'd cook, talk, stream something mindless, then sit outside sometimes when the weather was soft, just listening to the city breathe. Mark had this way of making silence feel safe, not awkward. We didn't need constant stimulation to prove we were happy. We just were. That's what I loved about him. He didn't compete with me. He didn't try to outshine me. He made space for me. And maybe that's why my friends never liked him. Not openly, of course. Not in the way people do when they want to look like the villain. My circle wasn't cruel on paper. They were the kind of women who posted about empowerment and self-worth, who talked about standards and alignment and protecting your peace. But their version of peace came with rules. They'd known me since college. We'd grown up together in a way that made them feel like family. Girls' trips, birthdays, bad breakups, late-night wine talks where we swore we'd never let a man ruin our lives. They watched me climb the ladder, watched me build a career I was proud of. And then I married Mark, a good man, a steady man, not flashy, not wealthy, not the type they imagined for me. They never said it like that. They said things like, he's sweet, or he seems simple, or my least favorite, you're just so capable. I hope he doesn't hold you back. And every time they said it, I'd feel the same tiny flare of defensiveness, like I was being asked to justify my own happiness. But no one made me feel that tension more than Jennifer. Jennifer was the center of the group, whether anyone admitted it or not. She didn't just lead conversations, she controlled the mood of the entire room. If she was amused, everyone laughed. If she was quiet, everyone became careful. If she decided someone didn't belong, that person would feel it without her ever saying it directly. She was never overtly vicious at first. That's what made her dangerous. She did it with smiles, with soft tones, with concern. At my wedding, she hugged me tight and whispered, I just want you to be sure. Sure. Like I was signing a contract I didn't understand. Mark didn't miss it. He noticed everything. But he never demanded I cut them off. He never put me in that position. Instead, he tried. He showed up to dinners, brunches, parties, gatherings where everyone already had inside jokes and shared history, and he was the only person who had to earn his place. He'd sit beside me, polite, attentive, asking questions, listening even when Jennifer steamrolled the room with stories about people I barely remembered. He'd laugh at jokes that weren't funny. He'd keep his posture open, his voice calm. And afterward, in the car, he'd say softly, your friends are intense. I'd squeeze his hand and try to make light of it. They're just protective. But even as I said it, I felt the small, uncomfortable truth underneath. Protective of me? Or possessive? Jennifer especially had a way of testing Mark while pretending it was harmless. Oh, Mark, you're so brave for coming to these things, she'd say, smiling like she was complimenting him. Most men would be intimidated. Or, Emma's always been such a high achiever. You must feel lucky. Lucky. Like he won me in a raffle. I would laugh too quickly, brush it off too fast, because confronting Jennifer was exhausting. She was the kind of person who could twist any criticism into an accusation that you were too sensitive, too emotional, projecting. And I didn't want conflict. Not because I was weak, because I'd built my whole life around staying in control. My emotions, my image, my relationships. If I could keep everyone happy, then nothing would fall apart. That was the belief I carried like armor. And it worked. Until it didn't. When Jennifer invited us to that first dinner, I told myself it was progress. I told myself she was finally trying. I told myself Mark being included meant things were improving. I didn't understand the real reason she insisted he come, because Jennifer wasn't inviting him into the group. She was setting the stage. And I, so proud of my ability to read numbers and predict outcomes, walked right into it without seeing the obvious. The worst part? Somewhere deep down, I think I felt it. That quiet instinct that whispered, something isn't right. But I ignored it because I wanted my marriage and my friendships to coexist neatly, like columns that would balance if I adjusted them carefully enough. And Friday night would prove, brutally, that people don't balance. They break. The truth is, the cracks didn't start at that dinner. They had been forming quietly, almost politely, long before Jennifer ever forgot to save a chair for my husband. At the time, I just didn't want to see them. After the wedding, things shifted in ways I couldn't immediately name. Not dramatically, not in a way that screamed problem. It was subtler than that, like a room slowly losing oxygen while everyone kept smiling. My friends still invited me out, but the tone changed. Girls' night, they'd say, no spouses, just us. At first, I didn't think twice. Everyone deserves space, right? Time with friends without their partners hovering. Mark never complained. If anything, he encouraged me to go. You need your people, he'd say, kissing my forehead. I'll survive one evening without you. But eventually the exclusions became specific. Dinners where Mark was the only husband not included. Brunches where Jennifer would casually say, "Oh, I assumed Mark wouldn't want to come." Events where his name simply didn't appear in the invitation at all. When I brought it up gently, "Should I ask if Mark can join?" Jennifer would tilt her head and smile like I'd said something naive. "Emma, it's not that deep," she'd say. "We just want you. You don't need to bring him everywhere." And I'd nod, because pushing back meant conflict. And conflict meant disruption. What I didn't notice was how Mark changed in those moments. He never sulked, never guilted me, never accused me of choosing them over him. But there were pauses, tiny hesitations before he said, "Have fun." A flicker in his eyes when I dressed up for yet another dinner he wasn't attending. Once, while I was putting on earrings, he asked casually, "Is Jennifer going to be there?" I shrugged. "Probably." He nodded, then said nothing. That should have told me something. Mark wasn't insecure. He wasn't threatened by strong women or tight-knit friendships, but he was observant. And he was beginning to understand something I wasn't ready to admit. Jennifer didn't see him as part of my life. She saw him as temporary. The comments became sharper, not outright insults, but carefully worded suggestions. "She's always been so independent," Jennifer would say to others while I stood right there. "Marriage changes things, not always for the better." Or, "I just hope Emma doesn't dim herself." Sometimes she said them directly to me, her voice soft, conspiratorial. "I worry about you," she'd say. "You give so much. Just promise me you won't disappear into being a wife." Disappear. Like my marriage was a black hole swallowing my identity. I'd laugh it off because what else was I supposed to do? Say, "Actually, my husband makes my life better?" That would turn me into the defensive one, the emotional one, the woman who can't take feedback. And Jennifer thrived in that imbalance. She loved being the one who knew better. Looking back, I can see how she tested boundaries long before that dinner. At a birthday party, she seated me between her and another friend, placing Mark at the far end of the table, like an afterthought. At a holiday gathering, she joked loudly, "Well, Emma married for love, not lifestyle," and waited just long enough for the laughter to feel uncomfortable. Mark heard everything, and still he didn't explode. He never embarrassed me, never made me choose, which somehow made my silence worse. Because if he had reacted badly, I could have blamed him, but he didn't. So the responsibility sat squarely on my shoulders. The more I ignored it, the heavier it became. I started noticing how Jennifer watched me when Mark spoke, like she was measuring something, calculating, assessing whether his presence weakened her influence. And maybe that's what scared her, because Mark didn't need her approval. He didn't orbit her. He didn't play her games. And I did. The night Jennifer insisted we both attend that upscale dinner, I remember feeling surprised, but also strangely relieved. Maybe this is her way of extending an olive branch, I told myself. When Mark raised an eyebrow and said, "She specifically asked me to come?" I brushed off his concern. "She probably just wants everyone together," I said. "Don't overthink it." But even as the words left my mouth, my stomach tightened. Jennifer never did anything without intention. I ignored that feeling, too. All week I caught myself mentioning her name casually, like repeating it would normalize what felt off. "Jennifer booked this amazing place. Jennifer said it's more formal. Jennifer really wanted us there." I didn't realize I was already bracing Mark for impact. As if subconsciously, I knew something unpleasant was coming. And then there was the dress. I remember standing in the closet, choosing something elegant but not showy, because I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard. Mark complimented me anyway, his eyes warm, his smile proud. "You look incredible," he said. I believed him. And I believed that night would be fine. But the truth had already taken root. Jennifer wasn't inviting us to include Mark. She was inviting him to remind me and everyone else who she thought really mattered. And the worst part? She was counting on me not stopping her. That Friday night still plays in my mind with painful clarity, not in flashes, but in slow, deliberate detail, the kind your body remembers, even when you wish it wouldn't. Mark had just gotten home from work, tired but content, that calm satisfaction he carried when he'd had a good day at the shop. I was in the kitchen, tossing greens into a bowl, humming along to the radio, pretending everything felt normal. "Jennifer and the girls are doing dinner tonight," I said lightly, "at Chez Laurent." He paused mid-step. "Tonight?" "Yeah, 7. He hesitated just long enough for me to notice. "Us?" I nodded. She insisted. That should have been my moment. The moment to stop, to question, to listen to my instincts and his. But instead, I smiled and said, "It'll be nice, a change of pace." He studied me for a second, then nodded. "Okay." Friday arrived, wrapped in polish and anticipation. Mark wore his charcoal suit, the one that made him look sharp without trying. I chose emerald silk, elegant but restrained. We looked like a couple walking into a future we believed in. The restaurant was exactly what Jennifer loved. Dim lights, classical music, the kind of place where the staff spoke softly and everything felt curated. As we approached the table, laughter spilled out. Familiar voices, familiar ease. 8 people, 8 chairs. I counted without meaning to. Once, twice, my heart skipped. Mark slowed beside me. I felt it before he said anything. "Emma," his voice was careful, "there's no seat." I opened my mouth and nothing came out. Jennifer looked up, eyes bright. "Emma, Mark, finally." She stood to hug me, her perfume sharp, her smile wide. She didn't even glance at Mark until he spoke. "I think there's been a mistake," he said calmly. "There's no place for me." Jennifer tilted her head, all faux concern. "Oh, didn't Emma tell you?" She turned to me, smiling. "We only reserved for 8. My stomach dropped. "But don't worry," she continued smoothly. "I'm sure they can bring another chair, or—" she shrugged. "You could grab a drink at the bar while we catch up. It's more of a girls' thing anyway." The table went quiet. Every eye flicked between us, and I froze. I could feel Mark's presence beside me, steady, patient, waiting for me to speak, say something, anything. But all I could think was, don't cause a scene. The humiliation hadn't fully landed yet. I was still telling myself it could be fixed, that if I stayed calm, everything would settle. "I didn't realize," I whispered, uselessly. Jennifer waved it off. "It's fine, really." Mark looked at me then, not accusing, not angry, just hurt. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'll figure it out." And before I could stop him, before I could gather the courage I should have had, he walked away. I watched his back as he headed to the bar, and I did nothing. I sat down. I smiled when spoken to. I pretended my chest wasn't caving in. From my seat, I could see him, alone at the bar, nursing a drink he didn't want, close enough to hear the laughter, far enough to feel erased. Jennifer thrived. She talked, she laughed, she commanded the table like a queen holding court. Stories about trips, designer names, exclusive circles. I nodded, I smiled, but I couldn't swallow my food. Every laugh felt wrong. Every bite tasted like guilt, because the truth was brutal and undeniable. This wasn't a mistake. It was intentional, and my silence made me complicit. When Mark finally stood and walked toward the table again, the room shifted. "I just wanted to say goodbye," he said calmly. "I'll see you at home, Emma." My face burned. I wanted to beg him to stay, to apologize, to rewind time, but all I managed was a weak nod. And then he left. The door closed behind him with a sound so soft it hurt more than a slam. That was the moment. The exact moment I knew something fundamental had broken. Not just with Jennifer, but with me, because I had chosen comfort over courage, and my marriage paid the price. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. Plates came and went, glasses refilled, conversations shifted effortlessly, like nothing unusual had happened, like my husband hadn't just been dismissed and sent away as if he were optional. I laughed when expected, I nodded at the right moments, but inside, something was unraveling. Every sound felt too loud, every smile felt wrong. I kept glancing toward the empty space where Mark should have been, half expecting him to reappear, to sit down, to prove this was all some misunderstanding. He didn't. Jennifer leaned closer to me at one point, her voice low, intimate. You okay? I nodded quickly. Of course. She smiled, satisfied. Not because she believed me, but because she'd won. I left as soon as I could without drawing attention. My hands shook as I grabbed my coat. No one stopped me. The drive home was silent. Not peaceful silence. Heavy silence. The kind that presses against your ribs. When I walked through the door, Mark wasn't there. The house felt hollow, unfamiliar. I set my purse down, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the couch, staring at nothing. When he finally came in, his movements were quiet, careful. I'm sorry, I said immediately, words tumbling out before he could speak. I didn't know she would do that. He looked at me, really looked at me. You didn't know she would exclude me? His voice wasn't raised. That hurt more. I didn't think she'd be so deliberate. He exhaled slowly. Emma, this is Jennifer. I flinched. I didn't want to make a scene, I said, the excuse sounding weaker the second it left my mouth. A scene? He laughed softly, without humor. She humiliated me, and you were worried about a scene? Guilt surged up my throat. I didn't know what to do. That's what scares me, he said quietly. Not that she did it, that you froze. I felt tears sting my eyes. I didn't choose her over you. He shook his head. You didn't choose me either. The words landed like a blow. We sat in silence, the weight of it stretching between us. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. I've known her forever, I whispered. She's always been difficult, but she's been there through everything. And I haven't? He asked softly. I looked up at him, pain twisting his features, and my chest cracked open. You have, I said quickly. Of course you have. You're my husband. Then act like it, he said. Not angrily, but firmly. I swallowed. I was afraid. Of what? Losing them. There it was. The truth I hadn't let myself say out loud. He stared at me, stunned. You were afraid of losing people who treat me like I don't exist? I nodded, ashamed. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you've been shrinking yourself to keep the peace, he said. And tonight, it cost us. Tears spilled over. I'm sorry. He didn't rush to comfort me. That hurt, but I understood why. I don't need you to fight my battles, he said finally. I just need to know you won't stand by while someone disrespects me. I nodded, wiping my face. I see that now. Do you? He asked gently. I hesitated. Because seeing something and being ready to change it weren't the same. I'll talk to Jennifer, I said. I'll make it clear this can't happen again. He studied me, then nodded slowly. Okay. Not forgiveness. Not yet, just space. That night, lying beside him, I felt the distance between us more acutely than ever. He turned away, not out of spite, but self-protection, and I lay awake, staring into the dark, replaying every moment. Not Jennifer's smile. Not the missing chair, but the moment I stayed silent, because that was the real betrayal. The days after that dinner felt like walking through a house where every door was slightly ajar. Nothing was broken outright, but everything felt unstable. Mark wasn't cold. That would have been easier. He was calm, polite, distant in a way that hurt more than anger. He still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still asked about my day, still sat beside me in the evenings, but something vital had shifted. Trust doesn't shatter loudly. Sometimes it thins. I told him I'd talk to Jennifer, and I meant it. But every time I picked up my phone, my chest tightened. I rehearsed conversations in my head, firm but reasonable, calm but clear, and none of them felt survivable, because confronting Jennifer meant risking the collapse of the world I'd known for years. And she knew that. She texted me first. Hey babe, hope you're okay. Last night felt a little awkward. Was Mark upset? I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Yes, he was. The response came quickly. I figured, he's sensitive. You know I didn't mean anything by it. Sensitive. That word again, I typed. Deleted. Typed again. It wasn't okay, Jennifer. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Wow, okay. I guess I didn't realize we'd reached the point where I'm the villain for a seating mix-up. A familiar pressure settled in my chest, the subtle rewriting of reality. The way she minimized harm and magnified offense. I didn't respond. That silence did something. Over the next week, the atmosphere shifted. Invitations came, but with an edge. Group chats went quiet when I spoke. Friends checked in with carefully neutral messages. Everything okay? Not with you, but with Mark. Jennifer started telling her version of the story. At a brunch I attended alone, one of the girls laughed awkwardly and said, "I heard things got a little dramatic at dinner." Dramatic. I felt heat rise to my face. Dramatic how? She hesitated. I don't know, just awkward. I mean, Jennifer said Mark kind of stormed off. Stormed off. I realized then how fast narratives travel when you don't correct them. And I hadn't. That night, Mark noticed. "Something's off," he said quietly as we washed dishes. "Your friends." I sighed. "Jennifer's talking." He didn't look surprised. "About me?" "About us." He nodded, jaw tight. "And what are you saying?" The question wasn't accusatory. It was necessary. "I haven't said much," I admitted. He set the plate down slowly. "Emma." "I know," I said quickly. "I know. Every time I try, it turns into this thing where I'm the problem." He turned to face me. "Let me ask you something. If one of my friends treated you the way Jennifer treated me, what would you expect me to do?" The answer was immediate. Stand up for me. "And if I didn't?" I swallowed. "I'd feel alone." He nodded once. "That's where I am." The words settled heavily between us. That weekend, another dinner invitation arrived, this time framed as an olive branch. Jennifer would be there. I hesitated before telling Mark. "I don't want you to feel like you have to come," I said carefully. He studied me. "Do you want me there?" I did, more than anything. "Yes." "Then I'll come," he said simply. "But I'm not doing this again, Emma. I won't be sidelined." I nodded. "I understand." The dinner was worse than the first in a different way. Jennifer was all smiles. Too sweet, too careful. Her comments were subtle but sharp. "Oh, Emma, it's so nice Mark doesn't mind coming along to these things. Some men get insecure. You're lucky he's so adaptable." Each comment was a test, and I saw Mark absorb them, one by one. His posture straight, his tone even. He wasn't losing control, but I could feel his patience thinning. What I hadn't expected was the way the group followed Jennifer's lead. The laughter that came a half-second too late. The glances that slid past Mark instead of landing on him. The way conversations closed like doors. This wasn't just Jennifer anymore. This was a system, and I was part of it. On the drive home, Mark was quiet. "Say it," I whispered. He exhaled. "I won't keep doing this." My heart stuttered. "Doing what?" "Showing up to be tolerated," he said. "Being treated like an accessory to your life instead of your partner." Tears blurred my vision. "I don't want that either." "Then something has to change," he said, "because I won't keep paying for your fear." That night, lying awake, I understood something painful and necessary. Jennifer wasn't just attacking Mark. She was testing me. Testing whether I'd choose comfort over integrity, whether I'd protect the past over the present. And every time I stayed quiet, I was answering her. The breaking point didn't arrive with shouting. It arrived a few nights after that second dinner. Mark came home later than usual. I heard the door open, then close softly. No keys tossed into the bowl. No familiar call of my name. "Hey," I said carefully. He looked. That smile scared me more than anger ever could. "I've been thinking," he said. My chest tightened. "About what?" "About us." He paused. "About what it feels like to stand next to someone and still feel alone." The words hit slow and deep. "I don't want to feel like an obstacle in your life," he continued, "or someone you have to manage around other people." "You're not," I said quickly. He nodded. "I know you believe that, but belief and behavior aren't the same." I sat across from him, heart pounding. "I'm trying." "I know," he said softly, "but trying quietly while letting things continue, That still costs something. I felt tears burn my eyes. What are you saying? He exhaled, long and controlled. I'm saying I can't keep shrinking myself to fit into a space where I'm not welcome. And I can't keep watching you twist yourself in knots to avoid confrontation. Silence stretched between us. I love you, he said, but love isn't supposed to feel like this. That was the moment I broke. Not outwardly, not dramatically, internally. Because for the first time, the fear wasn't about losing my friends. It was about losing my husband. That night, after he went to bed, I stayed up alone in the living room, lights off, phone in my hand. I scrolled through old photos, college nights, trips, birthdays. Me and Jennifer, arms linked, smiling wide. I tried to remember when loyalty became obligation, when history became a leash, when I started measuring my worth by how well I kept everyone comfortable. I opened the group chat. Messages had piled up while I sat there spiraling. Is everything okay? Jennifer feels really hurt. This whole thing feels blown out of proportion. No one asked how Mark was. No one asked how I was. Just how Jennifer felt. That realization landed like ice water. I thought about the dinners Mark attended despite feeling unwelcome. The jokes he laughed at for my sake. The patience he showed while being diminished in rooms full of people who claimed to care about me. And then I thought about the moment at the first dinner. The chair. The silence. My silence. I pressed my palms into my eyes and let the tears fall. Because the truth was undeniable now. I hadn't just failed to protect my husband. I had failed myself. I'd spent years believing strength meant keeping the peace, smoothing edges, staying agreeable. But all it had done was teach people how far they could push me. Jennifer hadn't taken my power. I'd handed it to her. And in doing so, I'd almost lost the one person who never tried to control me at all. When I finally went to bed, Mark was already asleep, turned away from me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with a new, terrifying clarity. I couldn't fix this halfway. I couldn't negotiate respect. I couldn't keep choosing comfort and calling it loyalty. Something had to end. Either my marriage would slowly erode under the weight of my indecision, or I would finally draw a line and accept whatever came after. The morning everything shifted, I woke up before the alarm. Mark was still asleep, his back to me, breathing slow and even. I watched him for a long moment, memorizing the curve of his shoulders, the familiar weight of the silence between us. I didn't want to lose this. Not because it was comfortable, because it was real. I got out of bed quietly and made coffee, hands shaking slightly as I waited for it to brew. The house felt too still, like it was holding its breath. When Mark came into the kitchen, I didn't ease into it. I need to tell you something, I said. He looked at me, cautious but open. Okay. I've been afraid, I admitted. Not of Jennifer, of being the bad guy, of losing people I've outgrown. He listened without interrupting. And I think that fear has been costing us, I continued. Costing you. His jaw tightened slightly, but he stayed quiet. I don't want to keep living like that, I said. I don't want you to feel like you're standing alone beside me. If that means losing people who don't respect us, then that's the cost. He studied me for a long moment. This isn't about words, he said gently. It's about what you do next. I know. Later that day, the final piece fell into place. Not through confrontation, but through clarity. One of the women from the group, Laura, called me. Not Jennifer. Not one of her usual orbiters. Laura had always been quieter, less performative. I hope this isn't weird, she said hesitantly, but I wanted to check in. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. There was a pause. I feel like you should know something, she continued. Jennifer's been framing things a certain way. My stomach tightened. How? She's been telling people Mark made you uncomfortable, that he overreacted, that you're stuck in the middle because he's insecure. The words burned. That's not true, I said immediately. I know, Laura replied. That's why I'm calling. A few of us see it. We just haven't said anything because, well, you know how she is. I did. And the dinner? I asked. Laura sighed. She knew there wouldn't be a seat. She told the restaurant to cap it at 8. She joked about it beforehand. My grip tightened around the phone. She said it would put things in perspective, Laura added quietly. Perspective. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there for a long time. The doubt I'd been clinging to evaporated. This wasn't misunderstanding. This wasn't social awkwardness. This was control, and Jennifer had counted on my silence to protect her. That evening, Mark and I sat together on the couch. She did it on purpose, I said. The chair, the dinner, all of it. He closed his eyes briefly. I figured. And she's been twisting the story, I continued, making you the problem. He looked at me, steady. What are you going to do? I took a breath. I'm done negotiating my worth, I said. And I'm done letting anyone disrespect my marriage. I picked up my phone. I didn't write a long message. I didn't soften it. What you did was intentional and unacceptable. I won't tolerate disrespect toward my husband or myself. I need space. Do not contact me. I hit send. My hands trembled, but my chest felt lighter than it had in weeks. Mark watched me quietly. When I set the phone down, he reached for my hand. That's it? He asked. That's it, I said. Not revenge, not drama. Just boundaries. And for the first time, I understood the difference between peace and silence. The aftermath didn't explode, it collapsed. Quietly. Inevitably. Jennifer didn't respond to my message at first. No immediate outrage, no dramatic paragraphs, just silence, sharp and calculated. I knew that tactic well. She wanted me to sit in discomfort, to doubt myself, to reach out and soften the boundary. I didn't. Instead, the ripple spread. Within days, the group chat fractured. Side conversations sparked. Invitations slowed, then changed shape. Smaller gatherings, quieter tones, names rearranged. I wasn't cut out so much as released. And with that release came something unexpected. Relief. People started telling the truth. Laura wasn't the only one who reached out. Another friend admitted she'd stopped bringing her partner around months ago because Jennifer made him feel less than. Someone else confessed they dreaded dinners, but stayed because Jennifer decided who belonged. The power hadn't disappeared. It had just lost its audience. Jennifer, of course, didn't go quietly. She sent one final message, long, wounded, impeccably phrased. She framed herself as misunderstood, as generous, as betrayed. She said I'd changed. She was right, but not in the way she meant. I didn't respond. Mark noticed the shift before I fully did. You seem lighter, he said one evening as we cooked together, shoulder to shoulder. I am, I admitted. I didn't realize how much energy I spent managing her. He nodded. That kind of control is exhausting. Socially, things rearranged themselves. A few friendships faded. Not dramatically, just honestly. We had outgrown each other, and without Jennifer's gravity, there was nothing holding us in forced orbit. Others strengthened. Dinners became warmer. Conversations opened. Laughter came easier without someone directing it. No one crowned me brave. No one applauded. And that was exactly the point. Jennifer's influence dwindled because it required conflict to survive, and I'd refused to feed it. Mark never asked for an apology. But one night, as we sat outside under the soft hum of the city, I said it anyway. I'm sorry it took me so long. He squeezed my hand. You showed up when it mattered. That was forgiveness. Not loud. Not performative, just real. Jennifer's world didn't implode overnight, but it shrank. People stopped orbiting. Invitations dried up. Her authority, once unquestioned, became optional. And optional power is no power at all. I didn't celebrate that. I just noticed how peaceful life felt without the constant tension of pleasing someone who thrived on imbalance. For the first time in a long time, my marriage felt like the safest place I stood, not something I had to defend, something I could finally stand inside. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after Jennifer disappeared from my orbit. It became honest. That was the difference. Mark and I didn't wake up one morning magically healed. We had conversations, real ones, the kind where your voice shakes a little and your pride has to step aside. We talked about boundaries, about loyalty, about what it means to be a team when the pressure doesn't come from inside the marriage, but from the outside. And slowly, something steadier replaced the tension. Not fireworks. Foundation. We found our rhythm again, the kind that doesn't rely on proving anything to anyone else. Our evenings returned to laughter and quiet companionship, cooking together, sitting outside with no agenda, letting silence be comfortable again. One night, as I watched Mark explain some obscure engine part with the kind of enthusiasm only he could muster, I realized something important. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't dominate rooms. It doesn't need an audience. Real strength is choosing integrity when silence would be easier. I thought about all the years I'd confused loyalty with endurance, about how I believed being easy made me strong, when in reality, it just made me convenient. Jennifer didn't take anything from me. She exposed something I needed to face, that my fear of being disliked had almost cost me the one relationship that truly mattered. If there's a lesson in all of this, one I wish I'd learned sooner, it's this. You don't lose people by setting boundaries. You lose people by pretending disrespect doesn't hurt. The people who matter won't ask you to choose between your dignity and their comfort. And anyone who does was never on your side to begin with. I didn't walk away with vengeance. I walked away with clarity. And sometimes that's the most powerful ending of all.